Have you ever wondered what it feels like to be at the mercy of one of the ocean's most terrifying predators? From military officers on a routine training mission to vacationing families in the serene waters of the Bahamas, these real-life shark attacks prove that danger can strike when you least expect it. In 2024 alone, a United States Navy officer lost his life to a monstrous great white. A woman relaxing on an air mattress became a predator's prey, and a child's playful moment on a yacht turned into a nightmare. These chilling accounts will make you think twice before you step foot into the waters again. Are you ready to hear the terrifying reality of shark attacks? In 2024, aboard the United States ship Nimitz, USS Nimitz, a powerful aircraft carrier sailing off the coast of San Diego, Lieutenant Michael Anderson prepared for another day of duty. He was an experienced officer in the United States Navy, known for his discipline and leadership. He had spent years training for challenging missions, and his fellow officers respected his skills. Anderson had always been drawn to the sea, inspired by stories of exploration and naval bravery. His journey began at the Naval Academy, where he worked hard to earn his position. The USS Nimitz was a floating city, home to thousands of sailors and officers. It carried advanced fighter jets, helicopters, and powerful defense systems. Despite its size and strength, water operations remained risky. The ocean was unpredictable and dangers lurked beneath the surface. Anderson understood these risks, but never let them shake his confidence. On this particular day, the crew was conducting a routine water survey. A small boat was lowered into the ocean to collect data, and Anderson was tasked with overseeing the operation. The sun was bright and the waves were steady. Everything seemed normal as the team carried out their duties. No one knew that a giant predator was lurking nearby. Beneath the surface, a great white shark over 20 feet long patrolled the waters. It moved with silent power, drawn toward the ship by the vibrations and movement. Great white sharks were known for their strength and speed. Though attacks on humans were rare, the massive shark was a hunter, always searching for its next meal. As the boat maneuvered near the ship, Anderson stood near the edge, focused on his task. Suddenly, a shift in the waves made the boat rock slightly. In a split second, Anderson lost his balance. His foot slipped and he tumbled overboard. The crew reacted immediately, shouting for help. The ocean swallowed him, and he struggled to regain control. The sudden splash sent ripples through the water, capturing the attention of the great white shark. The predator turned toward the disturbance. Its sharp senses detected the movement and splashing. It moved swiftly, cutting through the water with terrifying speed. Anderson, disoriented from the fall, fought to stay afloat. The crew scrambled to throw him a life ring, but the shark had already locked onto its target. Without hesitation, the shark lunged, its powerful jaws opening wide. In one devastating motion, it bit down, decapitating Anderson instantly. The water turned red as the horrifying scene unfolded before the helpless crew. Panic spread through the small boat. The officers fired into the water, trying to scare the shark away, but it was too late. The predator disappeared into the depths, leaving nothing but silence. The USS Nimitz's emergency team rushed to respond, but there was nothing they could do. The attack had lasted only moments, but its impact would last forever. The crew stared at the blood-streaked water, realizing they had just lost one of their own. The ocean remained calm, but the air was filled with shock and disbelief. The crew on the small boat and those aboard the USS Nimitz stood frozen, staring at the water where the attack had taken place. The great white shark had disappeared beneath the surface, leaving only a crimson stain on the waves. The weight of the moment sank in, and the reality of the tragedy became clear. The emergency team acted quickly. The boat was pulled back onto the ship, and officers immediately contacted higher command. The news spread fast, reaching every corner of the aircraft carrier. Silence fell over the decks as sailors and officers learned about the loss of one of their own. The mission was called off, and all water operations were suspended. A search was launched, but there was nothing to recover. The vastness of the ocean made it impossible to track the shark, and the powerful currents had already carried away any remains. The rescue team scanned the waters for hours, hoping for something, but they found nothing. The officers had no choice but to accept that Anderson was gone. Back on the ship, a memorial was held in his honor. The sailors lined up in formation, paying their respects. The captain spoke about Anderson's dedication and bravery, reminding everyone of the risks that came with serving at sea. A folded flag was placed on an empty chair, symbolizing his absence. The entire crew stood in silence, remembering the officer who had been lost in the line of duty. The attack raised concerns among naval officials. Great white sharks were known to inhabit these waters. But such an incident had never occurred during a training mission. Investigations began immediately to determine if safety protocols needed to be changed. Marine experts were consulted to understand if certain conditions had made the shark more aggressive. Some believed that the vibrations from the ship's engines might have drawn the predator closer. Others suggested that the splashing from the fall had triggered an instinctive attack response. The United States Navy reviewed its procedures for water operations. Future missions included stronger safety measures, such as increased surveillance before deploying boats. Special equipment was introduced to detect large marine predators in training zones. Sailors were given additional guidance on responding to unexpected threats in open waters. News of the incident spread beyond the naval community. Media reports described the terrifying event, highlighting the dangers of deep-sea operations. Scientists used the attack to raise awareness about the presence of great white sharks in heavily traveled waters. The story sparked discussions on how human activity affected marine life, and whether encounters with sharks were becoming more frequent. Despite the tragedy, the crew of the USS Nimitz continued their duties. The loss of Anderson remained in their hearts, but they honored his memory by carrying on with their mission. His name was added to the list of those who had made the ultimate sacrifice while serving at sea. In August 2019, Claire arrived in the Bahamas for a long-awaited vacation. She was a 32-year-old solo traveler from Boston who had always loved the ocean. Having worked as a graphic designer, she often spent her free time exploring new places. This trip was special to her because she had been planning it for years. The clear blue waters, soft white sand, and peaceful surroundings made the Bahamas her dream destination. Claire had chosen to stay at a quiet beachfront resort on Eleuthera, one of the less crowded islands. She enjoyed the idea of solitude, preferring the calmness of nature over busy tourist spots. Her days were filled with swimming, reading on the shore, and walking along the beach. The locals were friendly, and she felt safe in the small community. One afternoon, Claire decided to relax on an air mattress while floating in the shallow water near the beach. The sun was warm, and the waves were gentle. It was the perfect way to unwind. As she lay on her back, the soft rocking of the water made her feel completely at peace. She closed her eyes, listening to the distant sound of seagulls and the soft rustling of palm trees. Without realizing it, she drifted farther from the shore. The ocean's currents, though slow, carried her past the shallow waters and into deeper areas. From the beach, her floating figure became smaller and smaller. No one noticed how far she had gone. The air was still and the water remained calm. Beneath the surface, a great white shark moved silently. It had been drawn to the area by the scent of fish and other sea life. The large predator, nearly 15 feet long, had been circling the deeper waters for hours. The sudden presence of a floating figure caught its attention. Unlike the smaller fish and sea creatures it usually hunted, this was something different. Claire remained unaware of the danger below. She was still resting, enjoying the quietness of the moment. The ocean around her was clear, but she did not see the shadow moving closer beneath her. The shark, guided by instinct, approached the air mattress slowly. It swam in circles, studying the unfamiliar shape. Then, in a swift and powerful movement, it struck. The force of the attack knocked Claire off the air mattress and into the water. Before she could react, the shark bit into her leg, dragging her beneath the surface. She thrashed, trying to free herself, but the predator's grip was too strong. A scream escaped her lips, but there was no one close enough to hear. The water churned as the struggle continued. Then the waves grew still again. The empty air mattress floated on the gentle waves, moving farther from the shore. People on the beach continued their activities, unaware of the tragedy that had just taken place. The water, which had briefly shown signs of struggle, became calm again. The ocean held its silence, offering no trace of what had happened beneath the surface. Minutes passed before someone noticed that Claire was no longer on the mattress. A couple walking along the beach pointed at the floating object, wondering why it was empty. Concern spread as more people turned their attention to the water. Resort staff were alerted, and soon a few locals took a small boat to investigate. As they reached the drifting mattress, their hearts sank. There was no sign of Claire. Panic set in as people scanned the horizon, hoping to catch sight of her. A lifeguard rushed into the water, swimming out toward the deeper areas. Others stood frozen on the shore, their eyes fixed on the waves. Calls for help echoed across the beach, but the vast ocean gave no answers. Authorities were contacted immediately. Within minutes, a rescue team arrived with boats and divers. The search began as they carefully scanned the waters, hoping for any sign of Claire. Helicopters flew overhead, their blades cutting through the quiet sky. The once peaceful afternoon had turned into a desperate effort to find the missing traveler. As the search continued, a lifeguard noticed something in the distance. A dark shape moved beneath the surface, disappearing as quickly as it had appeared. Moments later, a piece of torn fabric was found floating near the deeper waters. The divers, now aware of the danger, proceeded with caution. They knew what they were looking for, but they also knew the risks. Hours passed, but the outcome became clear. Claire was gone. The ocean had taken her, leaving nothing behind but silence. The news spread quickly across the island, sending waves of shock through the local community. Visitors at the resort, once enjoying their vacations, now stood in disbelief. The peaceful beach that had been a place of joy had become a scene of sorrow. Authorities closed off the area, warning others to stay out of the water. Experts believed that the shark, drawn by movement and scent, had mistaken Claire for prey. It was a rare event, but it served as a reminder of the unpredictable nature of the sea. Days later, Claire's story reached international news. People across the world read about the tragedy, feeling a deep sense of sadness for the woman who had come to enjoy the ocean but never returned. Her family, devastated by the loss, traveled to the Bahamas to gather her belongings. They stood on the shore where she had last been seen, watching the waves move in endless motion. The resort, shaken by the event, took new safety measures. Warnings were placed along the beach, reminding visitors to stay close to shore. Locals mourned the loss, remembering Claire as the traveler who had come for peace but met an untimely end. The ocean remained as beautiful as ever, but beneath its surface, a reminder of the unknown always lingered. In July 2020, the warm sun shone over the calm waters of the Mediterranean Sea. The sky stretched endlessly, meeting the deep blue ocean at the horizon. A luxurious white yacht floated peacefully, carrying a wealthy family on a summer vacation. The gentle waves rocked the boat as the sound of seagulls filled the salty air. On board the yacht was 6-year-old Oliver, a bright and curious boy with golden hair. He had always loved the ocean, fascinated by the way the sunlight danced on the water. His mother, Isabella, a successful businesswoman, had planned this trip as a way to relax. She sat in a reclining chair on the deck, enjoying the soft breeze as she closed her eyes for a short nap. The yacht had everything they needed: spacious rooms, delicious food, and a crew ready to serve them. It was a perfect getaway. Oliver, full of energy, ran around the deck playing with his small toy boat. He pretended it was on an adventure, sailing across the vast sea. The crew kept an eye on him as they went about their duties, but no one expected anything unusual to happen. The ocean seemed peaceful and the day was quiet. As the yacht drifted lazily, Oliver moved closer to the railing, standing on his tiptoes to look at the water below. The waves sparkled in the sunlight, and he felt the excitement of being so close to the endless blue. He reached out with his toy boat, trying to make it float on the surface. But just as he stretched a little farther, his foot slipped on the smooth deck. In an instant, he lost his balance. His small hands reached out, trying to grab onto something, but there was nothing to hold. His body tilted forward, and before he could cry out, he fell over the edge. The water, so inviting just moments ago, now surrounded him, cold and unfamiliar. Panic filled his little heart as he thrashed, kicking and splashing. His voice broke through the quiet afternoon as he called out for help, but no one heard him. His mother remained asleep, unaware of what had happened. The crew, busy with their work, had not seen him fall. The yacht continued to move, slowly drifting away from where Oliver struggled in the waves. Beneath the surface, something stirred. The movement of the water had attracted attention. A dark shadow glided through the deep, silent and powerful. A great white shark, one of the ocean's most feared hunters, had sensed the splashing. It moved closer, drawn by the commotion. Oliver's small arms fought against the water, but his strength was fading. The sunlight above him shimmered, and the yacht grew smaller in the distance. He had never felt so alone. The shadow beneath him grew larger. The ocean, which had once seemed so beautiful, now held a danger he could not escape. Within moments, the great white shark attacked, and Oliver's cries were lost to the vast sea. The ocean remained calm as if nothing had happened. The yacht drifted forward, leaving behind the silent waves where Oliver had been moments before. The water, once sparkling with sunlight, now carried only gentle ripples. No one on the yacht noticed that the little boy was missing. His mother still rested in her chair, the soft breeze moving her hair as the warmth of the afternoon surrounded her. Minutes passed before one of the crew members glanced toward the deck where Oliver had been playing. He saw the small toy boat lying near the railing, but there was no sign of the boy. A strange feeling crept into his chest as he looked around. He called out, expecting Oliver to respond. The absence of an answer sent a chill through the air. The crew moved quickly, checking every corner of the yacht. Oliver was nowhere to be found. Panic spread among them as they realized what might have happened. One of the crew members ran to Isabella and shook her awake. Confusion filled her face as she sat up, looking at their worried expressions. Her eyes searched the deck for her son, but he was not there. A desperate search began. The yacht slowed as the crew scanned the water, their voices rising with fear. The radio crackled as they called for help, reporting a child overboard. The realization hit Isabella with full force. She rushed to the railing, her heart pounding as she stared at the endless sea. She screamed his name, but only the wind answered her cries. A rescue boat was dispatched from a nearby vessel, rushing toward the area where Oliver had last been seen. The crew dropped lifebuoys into the water, hoping for a miracle. The captain ordered the yacht to turn back, retracing its path. Time moved slowly as they searched, their eyes scanning the gentle waves for any sign of the little boy. Hope began to fade as the minutes turned into an hour. The once clear water now seemed vast and empty. The crew members looked at each other, their faces pale with fear. The search continued, but deep inside they knew the truth. Oliver had been taken by the great white shark, and there was nothing left to find. News of the tragedy spread quickly. Reports of the attack reached the media, and soon the world knew of the young boy lost to the sea. The family, once filled with joy, now faced an unimaginable loss. Their beautiful vacation had turned into heartbreak. In the weeks that followed, discussions about safety on private yachts increased. Experts spoke about precautions that could prevent such accidents. Parents around the world held their children closer, reminded of the dangers that could hide beneath the peaceful ocean. The luxury of the yacht no longer mattered. The water, once seen as a place of adventure, now carried a painful memory that could never be erased. In 2024, wealthy businessman Richard set off on a luxury fishing trip off the coast of New Zealand. Known for his business success, Richard enjoyed the finest comforts life could offer. His yacht, a magnificent private vessel, was equipped with all the amenities one could imagine. A crew of experienced sailors and fishermen accompanied him, eager to help him catch the perfect marlin, a prized fish in these waters. The trip had been planned for months, with Richard looking forward to a day of fishing in one of the most beautiful locations in the world. The crystal-clear waters of the Pacific Ocean stretched endlessly before him, and the bright sun reflected off the surface, creating a peaceful atmosphere. As the yacht made its way toward a remote fishing spot, the crew prepared for the day's adventure. They ensured the equipment was ready, and Richard, dressed in his finest fishing gear, eagerly waited for his turn to cast his line. The crew, well-trained and familiar with the area, began setting up the fishing rods. Richard, with his enthusiasm, was excited about reeling in a marlin. The air was filled with the sounds of the ocean and the soft hum of the boat's engine as they moved closer to the fishing grounds. Everything seemed perfect, with the tranquil waters making it an ideal day for fishing. However, unbeknownst to Richard and his crew, something far more dangerous lurked below the surface. As the boat approached a prime fishing spot, the scent of fresh bait and fish in the water caught the attention of a massive great white shark. The enormous predator, drawn by the disturbance, began circling the yacht. Richard, unaware of the shark's approach, focused on his fishing line, hoping to catch a big one. His crew, also absorbed in their tasks, did not notice the dangerous creature emerging from the depths. Just as Richard reeled in the line to check the bait, the shark struck. With incredible speed, the shark lunged toward the baited hook. The powerful jaws clamped down on the fish, and in an instant, the shark pulled both the marlin and Richard into the water. The crew watched in shock as Richard disappeared beneath the surface, dragged by the powerful creature. Panic set in as the men on board scrambled to react. They immediately began to shout for help, grabbing ropes and life-saving equipment, but the shark circled around them, making it too dangerous to approach. The crew tried to move the boat closer to Richard, hoping to pull him out of the water. However, the shark continued its attack. and the situation turned into a deadly standoff. The crew members worked quickly, but the shark's presence made it impossible to help immediately. They were trapped in a tense moment, unsure of how to proceed without putting themselves at risk. Despite the terrifying situation, Richard managed to survive. The shark eventually retreated, allowing the crew to pull him back onto the boat. His clothes were torn and his body was bruised, but he was alive. Although shaken by the ordeal, Richard's respect for the power of nature grew immensely. The once carefree businessman had faced the raw power of the ocean, and it left him forever changed. The crew, though relieved, couldn't forget the close call. The day that started with excitement ended with a deep respect for the wild, a reminder of the dangers lurking beneath the surface. The aftermath of the attack was one that Richard and his crew would never forget. The close call left everyone on board shaken and filled with a deep sense of respect for the raw power of nature. Richard, despite being terrified, was grateful to have survived. He sat quietly on the deck of the yacht, still trying to comprehend what had just happened. His body ached and his mind raced with the thoughts of how close he had come to losing his life. The crew quickly assessed the situation and made sure that no one else was in immediate danger. The shark, after completing its attack, had disappeared back into the deep blue waters, leaving only the ripples behind. Richard's survival was a relief, but the frightening experience left its mark on everyone present. The crew members, who had been trained for emergencies, went into action mode, ensuring Richard was comfortable and attended to. They gave him water, checked for injuries, and made sure he wasn't in shock. Despite the physical trauma, Richard seemed more emotionally shaken by the experience. The once carefree businessman who had come on the trip for relaxation and fun was now a man who had faced the sheer strength of nature. It was clear that this experience would stay with him forever. As the yacht slowly began its journey back toward the shore, the mood among the crew was quiet. The usual chatter that accompanied such trips was replaced by a heavy silence. Each crew member was lost in their own thoughts, reflecting on how close they had come to disaster. Richard's respect for the ocean had grown, and he understood now more than ever how important it was to respect the wildlife that lived in these waters. Once back at the dock, Richard was quickly taken to a local medical facility for a full checkup. Though his injuries were not life-threatening, they still required attention. He had several bruises and minor cuts from the shark's attack, but his emotional scars ran deeper. The experience had forever changed him. He was no longer the man who had set out on this fishing trip with excitement in his heart. Instead, he was a man who had come face to face with one of the ocean's most powerful predators, and had lived to tell the tale. The news of the shark attack spread quickly, and Richard's story was shared among his friends and colleagues. While many were relieved that he had survived, they couldn't help but be in awe of how close he had come to death. The attack served as a harsh reminder of the dangers lurking beneath the surface of the ocean, even in places where people might feel safe. It was a wake-up call for everyone, showing that even in the most controlled environments, nature could be unpredictable and unforgiving. Richard would never forget the terrifying moment when the shark attacked. It was a stark reminder that no matter how rich or powerful a person might be, they were never truly in control of the wild forces of nature. In 2014, Brian and his 12-year-old son, Adam, decided to take a special fishing trip to a secluded part of the Florida Keys. They had always enjoyed spending time together outdoors, away from the distractions of daily life. Brian, a hard-working man in his late 30s, cherished these moments with his son, who was growing up fast. Adam, full of energy and curiosity, loved the ocean. He had been fishing with his father since he was little, and they had always made the trip to the Florida Keys a part of their yearly tradition. This year was no different. The sun was shining brightly, and the water around them was calm as their boat gently rocked back and forth. They spent the day fishing, enjoying the peace of the remote area. The only sounds were the gentle hum of the boat's motor and the occasional splash of fish jumping out of the water. Brian felt relaxed and happy, knowing that this was a time well spent with his son. Adam, full of life and energy, had been excited about the trip for weeks. He had his own fishing pole, and he loved every moment of the adventure, even if the fish weren't biting as much as they hoped. By the time the afternoon sun began to dip lower in the sky, they decided to call it a day. Brian suggested they head back to the shore, but Adam, wanting to make the most of the day, asked if he could swim in the clear, inviting water. Brian agreed, though he kept a close eye on his son, knowing the sea could sometimes be unpredictable. The water was calm, and Adam, eager to cool off, jumped into the sea. He swam a short distance from the boat, enjoying the feeling of being surrounded by the wide open ocean. It was a peaceful moment, but that peace was shattered all too quickly. As Adam swam further from the boat, Brian heard a sudden, terrifying scream. It was Adam's voice, and it was filled with panic. Brian immediately looked over the side of the boat, his heart racing. What he saw made his blood run cold. A large tiger shark, its sleek body cutting through the water, had grabbed hold of Adam. The shark's powerful jaws locked onto his son, pulling him under the water with frightening speed. Brian's eyes widened in horror as he watched the shark drag Adam away. Panic surged through Brian's body as he reached for a rope, throwing it into the water in a desperate attempt to save his son. He shouted for Adam, hoping he could hear him, but there was no response. The only sounds were the splash of the water and the faint echo of his son's screams, which seemed to fade into the distance. Brian's heart was pounding in his chest as he tried to figure out what to do, but it was too late. The shark had already taken Adam, dragging him deeper into the ocean. Brian's desperate attempts to save his son were in vain. He quickly tried to call for help, but by the time anyone arrived, it was too late. The damage had been done, and Adam was gone. The grief-stricken father was left alone on the boat, the memory of his son's final moments haunting him. The ocean, which had once been a place of joy and adventure, had now become a reminder of a tragic loss that would forever change Brian's life. The scene that unfolded left Brian in complete shock. The reality of what had just happened was too much for him to grasp. He had lost his son in the most unexpected and horrifying way. The water around him, once so peaceful and calm, now seemed cold and unforgiving. The stillness of the ocean contrasted sharply with the chaos of his mind. It felt as though time had stopped, and all that remained was a sense of helplessness. The moment he had been dreading for years had come, but he never could have prepared for it. Brian couldn't stop looking at the spot where his son had disappeared into the water. He had spent years teaching Adam about the sea and its dangers, but he never imagined that something like this would happen. The ocean, which had been a place of joy and bonding for them, had turned into a place of deep sorrow. The only thing that remained now was the tragic memory of his son's screams. As Brian waited for help to arrive, he couldn't help but replay the moments in his mind, wishing that he could have done something differently. He thought about all the times he had promised Adam they would always be safe on their fishing trips. Yet, there had been no way to prepare for this. No one could have predicted that a shark would appear so suddenly, or that his son would be the one to fall victim to its attack. The helplessness weighed heavily on him as he sat in the boat, staring out at the vast, empty sea. When the rescuers arrived, it was already too late. They scoured the waters, hoping to find any sign of Adam, but there was nothing. The shark had taken him, and no one could change that. The crew tried to comfort Brian, but nothing could ease the pain of losing his son. He felt a sense of emptiness that he couldn't describe, as if part of him had been ripped away in that moment. Back on land, news of the attack spread quickly, shocking the community. The family's joyful vacation turned into an unforgettable tragedy. Adam's laughter and love for the water remained in Brian's mind, now overshadowed by heartbreaking loss. As the days passed, Brian found himself struggling with grief. The image of his son being dragged under the water played in his mind over and over again. No matter how many times he tried to shake it off, the pain remained. He had lost not just a son, but his best friend, his fishing buddy, the one person he had shared so many adventures with. And now all of that was gone, replaced by the agonizing reality of loss. The once joyful trips to the Florida Keys would never be the same. Brian would never be able to look at the ocean again without feeling a deep sadness in his heart. He had lost Adam, and the impact of that loss was something he knew would stay with him forever. The tragedy changed him in ways he never imagined. Even as the world moved on, Brian would always carry the weight of that day. The loss was something that no one could truly understand unless they had experienced it themselves. In 2024, Lisa and Paul had planned the perfect wedding. The couple had always dreamed of an adventurous honeymoon, and, with the clear skies and gentle waves of Hawaii, it seemed like the ideal place to begin their life together. After their ceremony on a beautiful beach, they decided to make their wedding day unforgettable by going on a private dive. They were excited to explore the underwater world and share the experience. Both were experienced divers, and the thought of swimming with marine life thrilled them. Hawaii, with its crystal-clear waters and vibrant sea life, was the perfect spot for such an adventure. As the couple descended into the warm waters off the coast of Maui, everything felt magical. The fish darted past them in a swirl of colors, and they were amazed by the beauty of the coral reef below. They had been diving together before, but this was different. It was a moment of pure joy, celebrating their new life as a married couple. They felt safe and at ease in the vast ocean, unaware of the danger that was lurking nearby. The water around them was calm, and the pair continued to explore, blissfully unaware of the growing presence of sharks in the area. At first, it was just a few small reef sharks swimming past them. The couple assumed they were harmless, as reef sharks were generally known for being shy and non-aggressive. Lisa and Paul marveled at the sea life surrounding them, their smiles reflecting the happiness of the day. But then, something changed. One of the sharks, noticeably larger than the others, began to circle them. It moved in slow, deliberate motions, its eyes fixed on the couple. Lisa and Paul were still unaware of the growing tension. The shark's movements became more erratic, and it began to approach them more closely. Lisa noticed the change in the shark's behavior and instinctively nudged Paul, signaling that something was not right. Before they could react, the shark struck. In a swift motion, it lunged at Lisa and bit into her leg. The pain was excruciating, and Lisa screamed, but the sound was drowned out by the rushing water around them. Paul, panicked but determined, grabbed Lisa and tried to pull her towards the surface. The shark wasn't done, however. It continued its attack, biting into her leg again, dragging her further into the water. Paul fought desperately, trying to keep Lisa above water. His heart raced as he saw the blood mixing with the ocean. His mind raced, thinking of ways to save her. His breathing became shallow with fear, and he knew they needed help quickly. The couple's honeymoon had turned into a nightmare in an instant. They were no longer two newlyweds celebrating their love. They were fighting for survival. As Paul tried to swim upward with Lisa, the emergency divers who had been alerted to the situation arrived. They quickly surrounded the couple, managing to pull them both out of danger. But the damage had been done. Lisa's leg had been severely injured, and there was no way to save it. The bite from the shark had caused massive trauma, and despite the efforts to get her to safety, Lisa was going to lose her leg. The couple, shaken and traumatized, were rushed back to the shore. Their honeymoon, which had begun with such joy and excitement, was now overshadowed by the brutal attack. Lisa's dream wedding day had turned into a horror she would never forget. What was meant to be a beautiful memory of their first days together would now always be remembered as the day their lives were changed forever. The tragic event became a stark reminder of how quickly joy could turn to fear and loss. The days that followed the attack were a blur for Lisa and Paul. What should have been a joyful start to their married life became a painful struggle to process what had happened. As they were rushed to the hospital, the reality of the situation hit them both hard. Lisa, in shock and still recovering from the traumatic event, tried to comprehend the extent of her injuries. The loss of her leg was more than physical. It left emotional scars that would take years to heal. Paul stayed by her side through every moment, his heart heavy with guilt and sadness. The couple, once full of excitement and joy, now felt nothing but sorrow and disbelief. The island that was supposed to symbolize the beginning of their life together now felt like a cruel reminder of their ordeal. The once clear water they had marveled at now seemed dark and dangerous. Their honeymoon was over, but the memories of what happened on that fateful dive would never leave them. Lisa's recovery was long and difficult. She had to undergo multiple surgeries to stabilize her condition and prepare her for life with a prosthetic. The pain was constant, both in her leg and in her heart. The emotional toll of the attack was just as heavy as the physical. She struggled with her new reality, often feeling angry and sad about what had been taken from her. Paul, too, had to come to terms with what had happened. He blamed himself, even though he knew there was nothing more he could have done to save her. He was haunted by the images of that moment, the shark attacking, Lisa's screams, and the helplessness he felt as he tried to pull her to safety. He struggled to keep his emotions in check, wanting to be strong for her, but deep down, he felt lost and devastated. As the weeks passed, the couple tried to return to normal life, but nothing felt the same. They went back home where they faced the reality of their changed circumstances. Lisa had to adjust to her new way of life, and Paul was her constant support. But the trauma of what had happened in the waters of Hawaii was something they could never forget. The attack also left a lasting impact on those around them. Their families, who had been excited for their wedding, were now grieving with them. The joy of the celebration was overshadowed by the tragedy of what had happened. The community that had celebrated their love now found it hard to come to terms with the horror they had experienced. For Lisa and Paul, the event marked the end of an innocent chapter in their lives. What had been meant as a beautiful and memorable adventure turned into a nightmare. The loss of Lisa's leg was a constant reminder of the danger that lurks beneath the surface, a reality that neither of them had ever expected. The couple now had to rebuild their lives together, finding a new sense of strength and purpose in the face of tragedy. The attack had changed them, but it would not define their future.